So this is our one of our many starters that we keep going at the bakery. Our entire business is based on these starters, and this happens to be our natural white starter. The initial culture, this is a wild yeast culture, if you will, and the initial wild yeast culture was began about 20 years ago now, back in the days of when I was a pastry chef at the White Dog Cafe in Philadelphia. And I began this by taking organic grapes and figs. I wrapped them in cheesecloth, I smashed them, and I submerged them in a mixture of organic flour and filtered water. And they're fed about after 24 hours, and totally it's about a 12-day process in order to capture and grow and strengthen the initial culture. Once you go through this process of feeding, discarding, feeding, and you're concentrating the wild yeast culture, once you have that, if you perpetuate that culture and keep it healthy, it will outlive you and your family. But it can go on and on and on. And as long as it's kept healthy, it will provide you with beautiful bread. We keep it healthy by feeding it 3 times a day. Basically, I refer to it as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that is to keep the acidity down and to keep the pH in check. And as long as it's nice and healthy, if you want to take a look in here, you can see on the surface there are all these fine clusters of bubbles. And then there's still a little bit of raw flour. And so what is happening is the wild yeast are feeding on the sugars in the flour, and they're making it grow. But this action of that fine yeast, you can see the bubbles are bursting. It's all carbon dioxide being released by the action of the wild yeast feeding. So here's a wonderful French baguette, just came out of the oven, and what I'm looking for is the opening of the cuts, how they have risen in the oven during the wild expansion of the yeast before it's killed off. Typically, a bread, people are always asking me, how do you know when a bread is ready for the oven, how it's risen enough? Normally what I'll do, I'll tell them, I hold my hand over the dough, and it should feel cool. It should feel a little jiggly on the outside, but still solid in the center. If you really, and then I will press the surface of the bread. If the indentation holds, then it is proofed enough and ready for the oven. The other thing is you want the interior temperature of the raw loaf to be about 62 degrees, and that will ensure a more optimum expansion of the wild yeast in the oven. And then as far as baking, I know it's done. First I look for the coloring of the bread, and then I can take the internal temperature of the final loaf of bread, and I'm looking for about 200 to 210 degrees internally. Then I'll crack it open, and I'll look for the irregular cell structure, or what we refer to as the crumb. I'm looking for something that is fairly open with irregular holes. Then I smell, and I'm smelling for acidity, sweetness, and a nuttiness that is in the flour. And so if all the manipulation went as planned, then the final loaf will have a wonderfully nutty flavor and aroma. And then of course the crispy crunchy of the crust that you can hear.